Hi guys, it's Heather with Running with Scissors, and today we're making this cute little witch cauldron. This is your subscription box number 47. It's September of 2024. So let's get started. Alright, so let's see what's in the box. Alright, so we have a yellow sponge. This will be used to paint our backer board. And then we have the white sponges for all of the wood pieces. You have a variety of paints. Now when packing these paints, I realized that these cups are rather large. You're not going to use this much paint, so don't be surprised if your box contains a paint pod strip of the majority of these colors. So we'll just see how that plays out, and you know that you'll always have enough paint. Of course, your instruction sheet will be in here as well, but we just don't have that ready yet. You'll have a tube of glue, not two, but I'm using open glue from the studio, so you never know what kind of state that's gonna be in, so I just grabbed a couple. You'll have a brand new fine point or round pointed liner brush. Mine is used because no need to give me a new one. You'll have a base plate for your stand. Now, your box may contain two. It may not have these extra cutouts. It just depends how well this stays up with one plate, and we'll determine that when we are finished with this whole thing. So you'll know by now. If there's two in the box, it was because we needed a second one for stability, and then you'll just glue the two pieces together. All right, so I'll talk about that at the end of the video as well. And then we have all of our wood pieces. Now, we did make one change to this. Of course, by now you know that we always paint the demo piece and do the tutorial with the demo piece that we're painting, so we don't paint one ahead of time. You'll see that the logs engraved. That's why it's like kind of like a burned look to it, because the laser sits on top of it for a while to char that wood up. It was a mistake in the color setting, so those will just be engraved on your piece. So I just wanted the essence of like the log look on there, not so much the burning of that. So I had Melissa change that setting, and those will just be engraved just be scored lines on your piece. Okay, other than that, there was no changes that were needed to this file that I could see. And like I said, we'll talk about the extra base piece at the end if it's needed. So you can use your pizza box to paint on top of if you want. I'm just going to push mine to the side. You are going to need a cup of water because we are going to use the brush a little bit here. We've got some fine details in the witch's tights. So get a cup of water and a paper napkin or paper towel to dry your paintbrush off on. And I know I'm going to use some baby wipes because I'm going to just do like a faux stain on my logs there. So you're gonna want that. I don't think you're gonna need scissors or anything for this one. So other than that, you should be good. All right, so let's get to painting. I am going to paint my backer board first and get that done so I can move on to all the little detail-y things. So to paint my backer board, I'm going to use my yellow sponge. I'm going to use the soft side. I'm going to use my white paint. Now you will have a little bit bigger cup of a white paint for the backer board, just to make sure you have enough. And then also we will be painting some of our pieces white before we paint them with the colors, because yellow, orange, and green are hard to cover, and they cover much better if they have a white foundation. So I'm just going to use this yellow sponge, and I'm just going to wipe my paint on my backer board. I don't have to paint where my pot is going. That's the only thing engraved on this is the pot, because I figure if you can figure out where to put the pot, then everything else doesn't matter. It will fit around it. All right, we're gonna let that first coat of white dry, and that is of course going to need a second coat. So we're just gonna set this off to the side, and we're gonna move on to some of our other pieces. While we have our white paint out though, and using our sponge with white on it, I'm going to paint the bubbles and her legs and the broom heads white. Now her legs are, I'm going to say they're covered in tights, right? So I want to paint them with, I'm not even sure what colors at this minute, but I know that yellow, orange, or green is going to be in here somewhere, and it will cover much better if I just go ahead and cover them with a single layer of white. So I'm just going to use my yellow sponge because it has white paint on it and there's no need to waste another sponge. And I'm just going to paint a thin coat of white paint on these. It won't need 2 coats, just the one. And you can see, I can still see my lines through there, so I'll be able to paint the stripes on her tights. And I'm going to do the same thing with this. This is the bubbles in the cauldron here. We're going to paint these lime green, I know that. So we want to make sure that we get those nice and covered with a foundation coat of white. And then, like I said, the broom heads, because these are going to be yellow, I might mix a little brown in there to make them a little bit darker yellow, but at any rate, they'll cover much better. All right, so we're just gonna push that stuff to the side. We're gonna bring our backer board back over. It's dry already here. So we're gonna put our second coat on our backer board. And that should be done. It should only need those 2 coats. Again, we're just gonna set that off to the side. Shoes, cauldron. Let's paint the bats purple. Let's live on the edge. We'll paint the cat black, and then we're gonna paint this base black as well. Actually, you know what? We're gonna paint this brown. Okay, so these are gonna be our black pieces. So I'm just gonna take a white sponge and my black paint. Now, if your paint's in pods, which I suspect it will be, just dump your paint out onto your pizza box or onto a paper plate. You can scoop it out with your paintbrush or a popsicle stick. And you can actually cut these in half. You don't need these big sponges. This is overkill here. Gonna need 2 coats. We're just gonna set it aside. And now her shoes. Now her shoes do have buckles on them. We're just gonna come back in with our paintbrush afterwards, and we're gonna paint that back in. You can paint around it to make it a little bit easier if you want to. It will probably be just a little difficult to do that though. So I'm just gonna go ahead and paint it. Now you can see I barely touched this cup of paint. It's very, very full yet. It's actually at the very top. And I used a big piece of white sponge, which I did not need to do. That was it was a waste there, so I would cut those in half. But that soaks up more paint than you even probably need for a second coat. So we'll make sure that that's in a pod. And if you cut your sponge in half, you can dip it right into the pod. There's no need to even dump the paint out. Okay, so we've got that done. Everything's gonna need a second coat there. So let's just move on. I am gonna go ahead and cut my sponges in half here. Straight up the middle. And I'm gonna paint let's work with the green. Now this bubbles will probably need 3 or 4 coats. It will cover better because of the white foundation, but it will still need several coats. Set that aside. And let's see. Still deciding. I'm just gonna keep moving forward here. Got my yellow sponge out, or my yellow paint out, another half wedge. I'm just gonna do the broom heads right now. Now these will need 2 or 3 coats as well. But I'm gonna get that first coat on, and then we'll talk about how we're gonna change the colors after we get a couple of coats on here. As you know, I mean, if your broom is your main source of transportation, you need a couple of brooms. And you don't want them to look the same. You want them to be a little bit different, right? So we're gonna paint them a little bit differently. We're gonna cut another sponge. And we're gonna grab our brown paint. Or I'm sorry, our purple paint. And we are going to paint our bats purple. You paint your bats whatever color you want to paint them. You can make gray with white and black, but I just thought that purple might be a nice addition with some little extra color. Of course, we'll need 2 coats. Let's go back and give our black its second coat. We'll put another coat on both of our broom and our cauldron bubbles, our brooms. Second coat on our bats. Okay, everything's looking good. Let's move on to our brown, and we'll do our legs last, okay? So I'm gonna use the baby wipe faux stain method for this, and that just means I'm gonna take a baby wipe, wrap it around a finger, dip it into the paint, and then I'm gonna rub that paint onto the pieces. Now mine's gonna cover a little bit harder than yours will because like I said, yours will just be the intended score, not all of this engrave. And yours will look better than mine. I need a little bit more paint because of that deep engrave, but you will not need to do that. Somehow there's glitter. Don't ask me how. Okay, so there's that piece there. Of course, like I said, yours is gonna look a little bit different. I'm gonna keep using this baby wipe though, because I'm gonna do the broom handles because they're wood and I don't want them painted. I just want them to look like they're wood. And then I'm gonna do this one as well. Notice that one was a little light, so I'm gonna come back in and do it again. You can do it a second time if yours is a little light. Okay, and then we've got to do the base, so we're just keeping the same baby wipe. And if you have another base in your kit that has no slots cut out of it, there's no need to do any painting on that. It's just going to be glued to the bottom of this one. We'll know for sure at the end here if we need a second base. It's all pretty light. I don't think it will, but we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, and that's it for the brown. We actually, we'll leave the brown open because we're gonna use it to tint some of the yellow a little bit to do some darker, husky looking broom. I don't know what that stuff is called. Is that not corn husk? I don't know. Whatever. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna use my brush now. I'm gonna paint the legs because the legs are gonna need 2 coats as well, but we have to paint those with a paintbrush. You could just paint it all one color and then go over top of that color with the stripes, but I just don't know how well it would cover because at some point in here I decided that my legs were going to be painted orange and purple. So I was really struggling. Do I want them green and orange or orange and purple? I think I'm going orange and purple. All right, so let's see. The big portion, I'm gonna paint orange. So that's the wider areas, which are actually the tight. And then the smaller stripey part will be the purple. All right, that's gonna need 2 coats, but we're gonna move on to the purple stripe part. Second coat on the orange. And a second coat on the purple. All right, now let's get another coat, put on our cauldron bubbles. All right, I think that's all the coats that needs. And we're gonna make sure our brush is cleaned out because we're gonna come over and we're gonna do some work on our shoes here. So I want the buckle to be yellow, but I'm going to paint it white first because it will make painting it yellow so much easier. So I'm just gonna run a line of white around that buckle, just like that. Super fast and easy. Same on this one. You should be able to just paint inside those score lines. Just like that. Okay. And then I'm gonna wait for those to dry. All right, I'm gonna take my brooms here and let's see what we can do. I'm gonna take some yellow paint, just like a scoop of it with my paintbrush. And then I'm gonna grab just a little dot of brown paint, just like on the tip of my brush there. And I'm gonna mix it in with that yellow to get like a gold harvesty color. Okay, I'm gonna roll. You can see that I'm rolling. You might not be able to see that, but I'm rolling my brush in that paint. One, to keep my bristles together, but two, to unload a lot of that extra paint from mixing. And now I'm just gonna take and I'm just gonna swipe in some like wispy pieces, lines, wispy lines, let's say that. Oh yeah, that looks fantastic. We gotta remember up here, we gotta do some wispy lines coming down. All right, let's see how that turned out. And we're just gonna set that aside. We gotta paint across the center there to tie all those together. I'm gonna paint it with a little bit darker of a brown, but I'm gonna let that dry for a second. Okay, so this one, let's see, what do we mix in with this one? Let's take a little bit of black and a little bit of yellow. And then let's grab some white. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so I mixed just a little teeny bit of black with a little more yellow, and then I added a little bit of white to it. And I'm gonna roll my brush, and then I'm going to just give some swipey strands through here. I'm gonna come back with some yellow. And I might even grab just a tiny bit of brown. Oh yeah, I like that. This one's got a lot going on. Come grab some more of that. Okay, and then that's how that one turned out. All right, I'm gonna wipe my brush off here because I'm gonna bring my broom back, and I'm gonna grab a little dot of black, just a little teeny dot, and then just a little teeny dot of brown. I'm gonna mix those together, maybe just one more thing of brown there. Just trying to darken my brown up just a little bit. And then I'm gonna, again, rolling my brush to 1, get out all the excess paint, but 2, to keep the bristles together. And then I'm just gonna paint a line across here that's holding the bristles together. Just like that. Okay, and that's it. That's all for that. And we're gonna set those aside and let that dry. And we're gonna wash our brush out. We're gonna come back to our yellow paint and we're gonna paint our buckles in. This should just need 1 coat and should be pretty quick. You're just going over top of the white. If you make a mistake, just use a baby wipe. There's that. We're gonna do the same thing on this one. And there's that. All right, now let's see. We just got some decorative stuff that we need to do. So let's wipe our brush off because we're going to be using it again. We're not done with it. And let's go over to here. I'm going to grab my white sponge. It's my yellow sponge that I use with my white paint. And I'm just, you can see me over here on my paper napkin. I'm just getting excess paint out of it because I don't want a lot of paint in it. And I'm gonna come over here and I'm just gonna brush the edges very gently of my cauldron to give it a little extra oomph. It makes it look a little aged here. And then very, very lightly, I'm gonna come from one side to the other, right over the top. Now, if you end up getting too much paint on, just take a baby wipe and wipe it off, and then you can always repaint it black, okay? There's that. I'm gonna do the same thing to her boots. They're very small, so you have to go slow and light, a light hand. I'm gonna do the bats just a tiny, tiny bit. Just getting the edges. Oops, that one got a little much. I'm just gonna take a baby wipe and wipe that off. All right, and let's see. Okay, so that's it for doing that. Now I'm gonna come back to my bubbles, and I want to kind of define this area here between each of the bubbles. So I'm gonna take my brush and a little bit of the green paint. I'm gonna put that on my table, and I'm just gonna grab a little dot of brown, and I'm gonna mix that into there. And once again, I'm just rolling my brush in that paint. And then I'm gonna take, and I'm just gonna trace those lines of the bubbles. It's gonna be really subtle. So there's that. Now we're not done with this. We're gonna come back to our black sponge. Now you probably have a half sponge, which is way better than the big sponge I got here. And I'm just gonna get out the majority of the paint in it. I don't want all that paint. I want very, very minimal, so. All right, so then I'm gonna take that nearly dry paint wedge, black wedge, and I'm gonna just come around the outside edges of these bubbles. Just very gently. Again, you don't want too much. If you get too much, baby wipe is your friend. Should just be like a little hint of black along those edges. All right, I'm going to show you how that turned out. Okay, and let's see. Let's take our paintbrush and let's give our cat an eye. We're just going to dip the wrong end of our paintbrush into our white paint for the cat eye. And I'm just going to put one small dot on that cat eye. I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to do this again on the bats. The bats are going to get black eyes. So once again, just dip into the black paint. Now these are tiny little eyes. And I'll show you how that looks. All right, so we're still not done with our green paint or our white paint, but I think we're done with all of the other colors. So we can go ahead and cap that. And I just want to show you like how much paint is left over here, why I will switch you guys over to pods, because there's so much paint. The only one you'll use a lot of is the white. All right. All right, so I'm going to take my cauldron here, my cauldron bubbles, and I'm just going to set that on top of there for a minute here. I'm not going to glue it quite yet, but I'm going to take the wrong end of my paintbrush and I'm going to dip it into my green paint, and I'm going to put some dots of bubbles down here. Now, if you want a little bit larger one, you can swirl the paintbrush end on your cauldron there, just a little circle. That's probably enough. That's probably too many. I like making dots with the ends of paintbrushes, apparently. Okay. Hey, we're ready to glue. Actually, actually, you know what? No, let's take this backer board and that same sponge that we had all of that black paint in, and let's give this backer board a little bit of some shading here. I got most of my paint out there. I actually might have to add a little. Okay. Yep, so I'm just gonna drag my sponge around the edges of this. And then I'm going to do the same thing through the center here. I do not like that sputter though. You see that what I'm talking about? I don't like that. So I'm just going to come in and soften it up with a baby wipe. It's a little better. Try to keep your sponge moving from one side to the other when you do this without like, it's almost like scuffing your toe, like if you're walking down a hallway. I don't like that look, that feeling. So I kind of just want to keep your sponge moving from one side to the other without like catching your toes on the ground. There we go. That's much better. That's how that looks. Okay, I like that. All right, we're ready to glue. Now our cauldron dots are not dry yet, so we're gonna have to be really careful of that. And our cauldron is what we wanna glue on first because that is the placement of everything else. So tap your glue. Remember to keep your glue in the center. You don't need 2 tons of it. And then lay your cauldron on top of your score lines. The score lines are just indented enough that they should hide behind the actual piece, but it shows you exactly where they belong. So now we want to put our legs on. And so let's dry fit this here so it's where we want it. And same, let's just dry fit these pieces. All right, I think that's good. The shoe does hang off a little bit there, but when I designed that, I did do it that way. So that's pretty good. I'm just gonna lift out a leg. I'm gonna run a spot of glue. Well, of course, this glue's empty now because, you know, that's what happens here in the studio. I did grab another one. Same with this leg. Let's put some glue on this leg. And then let's glue down our shoes. Glue our broom. And then our bats. Bats would look good green as well. And then we'll glue our cauldron bubbles down. All right. So that's it for that. I don't think I'm gonna put anything else on this as far as paint goes, so I'm good with my paint. And then we've just got to take and pop this into the bottom base. And then we're gonna slide this one in. Fire goes into the base in front of the cauldron, and then the cat slides into this one. Now there is no need to glue those in. They'll be just fine like that. And now it's gonna be hard for you to see this, but I'm gonna stand it up just to see if we need that second base on the bottom. And I believe the answer to that is no, it's standing just fine. We'll tighten those notches up just a touch so they fit in a little bit tighter, and it will be okay. So there is, that's cute. There is your sub box number 47. It's September of 2024's box. All right, guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next month.